Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that cater to both commercial real estate newcomers and industry leaders alike. I'm your host, Yannis Papadakis, Business Development Manager on Crexi's auction platform, and today we are thrilled to sit down with Tal Tamir, co-founder of Premier Cleveland Investing. A little bit about our guest. Tal Tamir has been a fully licensed real estate agent specializing in investment properties since 2018. Tal, in the past few years, has helped investors buy and sell over 1,000 units with a sales volume of nearly $100 million all throughout Northeast Ohio. He and his wife created their team, Premier Cleveland Investing, to help fill the gap of investor-focused realtors who specialize in the intricacies of buying and selling investment properties, as well as vetting buyers to make sure the tenants and properties are well-positioned. Together with their team, they work exclusively with investors to help make Cleveland better through strategic and thoughtful investments, helping their clients identify, close, and transform properties into income-producing investment opportunities, while also making a place where residents are excited to live and love to call home. Tal, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Yannis. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I know we just covered a little bit about your background, but I'd love to briefly hear more about your career path and some of the lessons you learned along the way.
Born and raised here in Cleveland, Ohio. Graduated from Ohio State in 2015. After that, bounced around a little bit. We were in Colorado for a little while, Michigan. Ended up back here in December 2017, where I got in real estate full time. So it's funny. The journey's been incredible, obviously. So, after college, I got a degree in economics and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So bounced around a little bit, and we actually came across a picture recently on my wife's phone from 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, I was like, interviewing for jobs, trying to get into real estate, really pushing to get into it. And we had technically it was a double wide trailer that we lived in Michigan. And seeing where we are now, the businesses we built, the portfolio we built, it's very humbling, and it's happened in such a short amount of time. So I love those memory snapshots that come up. So I thought that was a cool little thing to share.
Tell me, what attracted you to commercial real estate?
So funny story. I don't know if I'm sure being on the Crexi Podcast, this name has come up quite a bit. But when I was trying to figure out my life, right, what I wanted to do and what I wanted to pursue, because I got an economics degree with no idea really what I wanted to do in life. So I was listening to, it was all about like mindset and personal development, things like that. So I was listening to a podcast by a guy named Grant Cardone. Obviously very big real estate guy. This was 8-9 years ago, something like that. And he started talking about apartment buildings and multiplying your money. And a light bulb went off in my head. I'll never forget that moment where I said, this is what I am meant to do. Like, this is my purpose, whatever you want to call it. But I knew that's the direction I needed to go. So really went all in from there on out, underwriting deals, understanding multifamily. It was always multifamily. It wasn't really industrial. It wasn't triple net. Like, it was always the apartment building concept that really made sense to me. And I think it's interesting because my grandfather, who's also from Cleveland, that he built like 5,000 apartment units and like 5,000 houses here in Cleveland, primarily. And you would think, oh, let me see what Papa does. Maybe I'll get into that. But I was never really involved in the business. We would sometimes visit the job site and see when they're developing the land and things like that, but never got into the nitty gritty of what they did. And it's funny, we ended up doing the ownership side kind of similar to what they did back in the day. So I thought that was very interesting.
Awesome. Were there some mentors that you had early on that helped you shape your career path? And if so, who were they?
Yeah, so I love this question, Yannis, because, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of books, self-development, and a lot of people harp on the having a mentor and surround yourself with people that are where you want to be, right? So along my journey, I didn't necessarily have a mentor that I knew personally, right? So I even consider like some of like Grant Cardone, Gary Vee, a lot of those, Andy Frisella, people that are very high in the personal development space as my mentors, even though I never personally knew them, that's one thing. I don't want to say I wish I had, because it's turned out really great for us, but something that I know is very important for people, especially getting started and not having that guidance, right? And what you want to do. We just kind of did what we thought was best and worked our butts off along the way, and learned a lot, but ended up making it happen. So
That's kind of an interesting way to look at it. I know a lot of people probably think to have a mentor, you need somebody that's going to be hands-on and personally guide you, but you can pick whatever mentor you want. They don't have to know you're their mentee for them to be your mentor.
right.
Did you have any lessons that you learned early on that became invaluable going forward, or let's call them favorite mistakes that maybe course corrected you onto your current path?
Yeah, so funny little story. So I've always been, so let me rewind, right? So when I found Grant Cardone, I knew I wanted to do multifamily. And my wife said, hey, you should become a real estate agent. I said, no, I don't want to show houses to grandma and go to here, and I don't want to do that. She's like, no, why don't you do it for the investment properties? I'm like, okay, that sounds more interesting, right? I'm like learning how it works, how it operates. I mean, that could be a good way to get into it. So we worked at like a property management company for about a year and a half, and learned a lot there. I was with the owner's husband. He was kind of like flipping single families and small multifamilies. And I was basically, doing everything A to Z, working with the end users, working with the construction team. So kind of seeing what it takes to kind of put that together. And when we left there, I became like a solo agent, right? So I was looking around, I was like looking at Marks and Millichap, CBRE, like the big multifamily firms. And something did not mesh with me. I had a chance to go work with Marks and Millichap. Yeah, so the guys at Marks and Millichap, the office here in Cleveland, they're the biggest shop in town by far.
Yeah.
And my cousin,
And they've got a very structured training and way of doing things. They've got their own system, and it sounds like you're really somebody that is a kind of a self-made, do it your own way kind of guy. So maybe trying to fit into somebody else's mold wasn't something that was working for you.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, Yannis, honestly. And my whole journey, I've learned that. I've worked for many other people throughout the time, and I make it work, but it's not always necessarily aligned with me and my values and how I like to operate. That's like another reason people are like, why didn't you go work for your grandfather? Like, they have a very systematized and structured business from 50 years ago, and that does not work for me. So I ended up going to like a small brokerage. It's big, but it's Keller Williams, but one of their small offices here in Cleveland. And I go there, I'm like, hey, I want to work in multifamily, do commercial, because 98% of those offices are residential agents. They sell single family houses, and that's it. So when I went there, they're like, yeah, that's fine. You clearly know what you're doing, what you're talking about. Like, we're good with that. So I met with call him like the coach or whatever. It's kind of a requirement for the new agents in the brokerage. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he's like, I don't know, Tal, you can't be successful just selling, investment properties. And I remember that moment, I'm like, fuck that, not a chance. I know I can do it. I'm going to hustle to do it. And I made it happen. And now, like, year over year, we're like the biggest performer in the brokerage and one of the top agents in the area. Just because I stuck with what I felt was the right thing for me in our business.
That's awesome. And this kind of touches on my next question, which is, what are some fundamental tenets of your work ethic that you maintain today?
Yeah, so it's really transformed, right? So when we got started, it was like super hustle mode. All day, every day, whatever we got to do to make it happen. And as we have progressed, I still have that, but it's more now systematized, a large focus on mindset. We visit our goals. We have weekly meetings. So really looking at it more of business than just me being a solo agent running around and doing deals and making it happen. So, the hustle, obviously everybody needs in the beginning. And I believe I still need it now and I use it, but I'm trying to get to the point where I can, kind of take more control over my life and my time and still have a very successful business.
Yeah. Any daily habits or practices that have become essential to your career? Could be
Yes,
commercial real estate related or otherwise, like meditation or.
absolutely. Yes, I have like a little morning routine. I'll wake up, do my thing, then I'll meditate, I'll read for a few minutes. And that kind of gets me centered for the day. For a long time, I'd wake up, come out of airplane mode, turn my phone on, and get to working right away. And then I'm like, okay, it's like 7:30 in the morning. Do I really need to be like answering emails and texts? Like, no, like take an hour, do your little routine. So I've been doing that. It helps a lot. That's probably one of the biggest things. Another thing that we do, my wife and I, our business, are weekly kind of Monday morning meetings. So we take 9 to 11-ish every Monday now for a couple of years. And we review all the deals we have, what's incoming, what's pending, what's active, under contract, etc. And we review our intention statement for our business, really like tie it into the purpose. I think it's helped us through a lot of the hard times we've had. And one of the best things we have is a giant, sitting right next to me, a giant whiteboard that has everything. I'm a very visual person. I'm a visual learner, right? So when I see it, okay, cool, we have this 20 unit that's in incoming. Let me call the owners. What am I missing? What do I need? So it helps me kind of schedule my week out and see what I need to do. Who do I need to call? Like, for example, we had someone on the board for a year. Follow up, because I know we wanted to sell, and then eventually we got it, we listed it under contract and sold it. So without the board and those weekly meetings, it's so easy for things to slip through the cracks. So I think that's huge. At least it's been for us.
Get a whiteboard. That's the moral of the story here. Tell me, how does being an owner of multifamily properties give you a unique perspective as a broker? Like, what advantages do you see for brokers who also own property compared to those who don't?
So I think it's the greatest advantage, right? So whether I'm working with a seller or working with a buyer, let's start with the seller. So I tell the seller, he's like, yeah, I want to sell my 40-unit apartment building. Okay, great. I bought and sold 7 buildings. We sold 150 units. And I know how to package this deal to make it as appealing to potential buyers as possible. I know what they're looking for. I know who to list, what to put in the OM, the whole 9 yards, because I've gone through it so many times. And I see what is useful and what's not. And then on the flip side, on the buyer side, you can say, okay, cool, let's look at this deal. I know every question to ask, not just like, oh, send me the T12 and the rent roll. Like, yes, that's helpful. Once you get that, how do you really dissect it? What are you looking for? Are you looking at tax increases or, what's in the city? So things like that, I think, provide a lot of value to our clients, like I said, whether on the list or the buy side.
So I'm curious, do you find that there's anything that you regularly get from sellers that they think is really important, but is actually totally irrelevant, that they're like, hey, this is, it's got this. Why aren't we talking about this? And it's like, that really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah. I mean, especially the last, I want to say 3 or 4 years, owners really think they're sitting on a gold mine and they're like, oh yeah, but the location and the rent possibility. And I'm like, that's yes, but someone has to go in, do that work, and yes, the area is great, but you're still getting $700 a unit. We should be getting $1,200. So and I think that's the thing. It's not like one specific thing. It's like they think they're sitting on a gold mine. We work with a lot of mom and pop owners too, so it's a funny thing, and you have to lay it on them pretty softly, you could say, to keep them from not blowing up on you or whatever, but. Yeah.
And it seems like in the current market, potential upside isn't as big of a deal as it was, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago. It seems like more buyers are interested in current as opposed to potential. I mean, great, there's a ton of potential there, but will you actually reach any of that potential, tap into any of that potential? It's anybody's guess with changing laws and different legislation that may come through. How do you mitigate those expectations? Stuff like, yeah, there's it's basically a gold mine. It's like, yeah, well, it could be, right, or it could just be a patch of desert. It really depends on what it is right now.
Yeah, so a couple things, right? So we deal primarily with sellers. I'll say the majority of our deals are our listings, and we're working with sellers. So when it comes to that, and they're like, hey, I want $5 million for my building, when on paper maybe it's worth 4.5. Us as brokers and as sellers being our clients, we need to do our best to package the deals where a lot of times we are selling the pro forma, right? So when I have a buyer call me and they say that exact question, like, hey, the actuals are XYZ, why would I pay a premium for something that I got to put work into? And this is where I really lean on my personal owner experience, right? So I tell them, hey, this is a true story. We bought a distressed property. It was like semi-distressed, right? It was like 50 units, C-class area, outskirts of Cleveland. And this was about, I would say, 3 years ago, something like that. And the owner was self-managing. He had like Bob in the office managing, playing casino cards and betting all day long, not paying attention to the property. And he had like 5 or 6 down units that have been down for like 3 or 4 years from flood or something crazy. So rents were super low. I mean, from the outside, it's a great property. We bought it at like, I don't know, 4 cap or 3 cap on actuals. But I had the confidence to say, okay, I know what this is, and I know I can take it to an 11 or a 12 confidently. And that's what we did. And we actually just sold that building earlier this year and did very well. We had
Congratulations.
some joint venture partners on that. Thank you. And people are like, oh, why'd you sell? And I'm like, if the time is right, you have to take advantage of the time. So time was right, had a great buyer lined up and made it happen.
It sounds like what you're saying is that there needs to be a very clear pathway, but also a plan of execution.
Absolutely. Yeah, like we're selling a deal right now, 46 unit, that has the same kind of story. And it's really said, what's the plan? What's the story behind it? So I'm walking through that with one of my clients on the buy side and telling him, hey, this is exactly what you need to do. Here are the people you need to know, and this is how you're going to execute it to get from A to B. But like without that, you can get yourself in big trouble for sure.
Yeah. Well, with all this entrepreneurial knowledge in mind, we'd also love to tap into some of your career experience regarding what younger brokers or investors can take away from this conversation. So to provide context, what is Premier Cleveland Investing and where is the company today?
Yeah, so Premier Cleveland Investing is a small real estate team my wife and I created here in Northeast Ohio. Help investors buy and sell, primarily multifamily apartment buildings. We've done a lot of single-family portfolios, kind of carved out a little niche for ourselves in that area, and have gotten very good at selling those. So right now it's me, my wife. My wife does mostly the marketing. She's back-end expert, all of the mindset, things like that. But she's now stepped out completely. We're actually expecting a child in about 6 weeks.
Oh, congratulations.
So she's like, preemptively, we're at a place where she can kind of step away until then. And we hired someone down in Florida, not a VA, actual person, they're not actual, but a person down in Florida that we know that is taking all of her role as the marketing and the admin, a lot of, I don't say my personal assistant, but a lot of busy stuff that he's taking care of. And then we have 2 agents on our team as well. And that's it. We don't want to grow the team. If anything, it's going to become smaller over time. And we started our team, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago. I was a solo agent, and then we started the team. And this year, we exceeded 100 million in the last few years. So I think this year we'll probably do somewhere around 60 million.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's like a small and mighty, right? Like,
yeah,
we call ourselves like between a residential broker and the markets, right? We're kind of that little middle ground where not a lot of people are playing.
So help me understand, for such a small and scrappy team, how have you grown so quickly? Like, what sets you apart from your competition that's let you kind of explode like you have?
So we focus a lot, like I've said multiple times, like mindset, right? So for us, it's kind of like failure is not an option. And when hurdles come up, and they have, and they will, we kind of go back to our core of why we started, to help the sellers, help the buyers, help the tenants have an amazing place to call home. And then we just keep getting back up. Every time we get knocked down, we get back up. And I think our purpose behind that really helps. And on top of that, now that we're really have a lot of momentum, people are coming to us and saying, "Oh, I see your emails, I see your marketing. I want to sell my property." Like someone called me the other day, "Oh, I have this, I don't know, 60-unit student housing that I want to sell next year. Got a referral from somebody else." So we've now kind of established ourselves as this kind of niche in the market, and a lot of businesses really organically, coming to us, which has been great.
Awesome. Well, I think you kind of hit it on the head there. Momentum, really capitalizing on the activity that you have, and keeping that pushing forward. There's a saying that I learned when I first got into brokerage, which is deals make babies, and you do a deal, it usually turns into meeting a new buyer, or talking to a neighboring owner. It turns into another listing, and you got to keep working that momentum and letting it, develop mass. And, that's amazing and so impressive that, you've started from such a small team to having such a big market share of the, space that you're in.
Thanks, Yannis. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a journey, and we've had some very quick growth for sure. And a big focus too is relationships. So we heavily, or at least I do, heavily focus on building relationships with people in the market, other brokers, lenders, inspectors, general contractors, the whole thing. And, a lot of times those come back, and that's really how we built our business, is getting out there, telling everybody who we are, what we do, and adding value to them, whenever we can.
Amazing. Would you mind sharing any of your favorite transactions throughout your career? Anything that was notable? I know a lot of the brokers that watch this love to hear some, tales from the trenches. What do you want to? What sticks out?
So I thought about this question before, and there was not necessarily one deal that stood out. We had a deal that did not go through. And it was a great learning lesson, right? So it was about 100-unit portfolio, interesting deal, very hairy, and we were working it. It was one of my buyer clients, and my teammate, his name's Michael, he was representing the seller. So we're under contract, we're going through the deal, it all seems to be going really well, and the buyer kind of flips the script out of nowhere and loses his shit, really. And from then on out, it was a total nightmare. And the deal ended up not closing. They closed like part of it, but not the majority of it. And, it was a nice 6+ figure check. And I couldn't have been more relieved when that happened, because I'm like, this guy has caused me so much stress, losing my mind. Every time he calls me, I'm freaking out. I'm like what do you want to pay, right, to do that? So the learning lesson after that is, like, when that happens, I'm kind of aware of it and saying, kind of like setting expectations up front, vetting buyers a little bit more. Of course, things can still happen, but it was a great learning experience for us that, yes, we're here to make money, but we're also here to help people, and this guy's not helping anybody. It doesn't align with our vision. So
Right.
It was a hell of a lesson, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to drill down a little bit on your market specifically, and learn what's happening in the state of multifamily in Cleveland and throughout Ohio. So starting off, what is your 30,000-foot view of the multifamily market today?
In Ohio, in our market specifically.
Yes.
So the Ohio market is generally still very strong in the multifamily space. You have cities like Austin, Houston, California. I have a lot of clients coming from New York that are selling their assets there and moving to Ohio because it's still extremely affordable and you can still buy buildings that make sense on paper. Like I have clients calling me from Toronto all the time, like, yeah, if you get a 3 cap, it's a great deal. So like when I see a 7 cap on actuals in Cleveland, I'm like, what's wrong with this property? So a lot of people are realizing that, I'm primarily in Northeast Ohio, so that's like Cleveland and some surrounding areas. Like Columbus is kind of like an Austin, Texas of the Midwest. It's booming, a lot of tech, everything like that. So people are realizing that Cleveland makes a lot of sense, and I think they're realizing that Cleveland's not going anywhere. People are like, oh, Cleveland, are there people even live there? Is there a downtown? I have clients come in, they're like, wow, this is like a real place, real city, a lot of people, things are being built, construction. So I think the market here is still very strong since there's a very strong buyer demand.
Absolutely. And could you talk a little bit, pros and cons about being in that region?
Yeah, so pros, I want to say it's very stable, right? It's not like, for example, I'll use Columbus because it's in Ohio also. Columbus, you have population growth, everything is going like this. Cleveland, it's kind of like just very even keeled, which it's not like, if you bought in Austin, Texas 10 years ago, yes, you made a killing, but now you can't buy there. In Cleveland, you bought in 10 years, yes, you're going to make a killing now, but it's been very slow and steady. Rents are still going up. You have a stable environment here, tons of healthcare, a lot of Fortune 500 companies are here. So once you have that solid base and you realize you don't need that 800% appreciation in 5 years, yes, it'd be great. But if you want to do this long term, that's, ideal in my opinion. And that's why we've invested in Northeast Ohio also. Cons, right now there's a lot of competition. So like you being a Marcus guy, their deals are trading for, pretty strong premiums. And we saw a lot of our deals too at nice prices for our clients. That's probably the biggest con is people are like, I got in too late or it's too expensive. But you can still find always the diamond or the deal that makes sense for you. At least that's what we've seen.
It sounds like part of what you're saying is, while some markets in Ohio may not have that, wild appreciation that you see, it also doesn't have, the wild, downswings and downside either. It's
Exactly.
strong fundamentals that, generally stable, and there's still, a lot to be explored there, right? It's not too late to, build a portfolio in Ohio or in Cleveland.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're clients doing it every day.
Awesome. And how would you say it's changed over the last, 5-10 years?
So it's gotten more expensive for sure. Like we see some of the deals that traded, let's say 10 years ago. Oh, you bought this building for 35 a door and it was like basically the same shape that it is now. Now you're selling it for 60 without doing anything. So there has been some really strong appreciation. Even like since COVID times, things have continue to appreciate pretty significantly. So, there's been a lot of new development over the last, let's say, 10 years. A lot of like sub neighborhoods of Cleveland that have really popped off. A lot of people like my age, like coming back after college or whatever, coming back here, like, wow, there are bars and restaurants. And there's a nightlife here. There's like different things that you can actually do, major sports teams. So we're seeing a lot of growth on the construction side, which kind of, I think, helps the city as well. And, the healthcare here is the biggest thing as far as like the core employment. Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, like they're unfortunately never going anywhere, right? Like it's a thing that's going on in our country and they're, massive in Cleveland.
Can you talk a little bit about some specific submarkets in Cleveland that you see as having some great potential and talk a little bit about why?
Yeah, so there's so many different pockets, right? When I talk to clients, they ask me this question all the time. I'm like, well, what's your goal, right? So if you want to go to like the most happening new spot, a lot of new development, new construction, you have places like Ohio City, Tremont, Detroit Shoreway. And these are all kind of like, it's like downtown Cleveland's right here. These are all kind of like just off of downtown Cleveland and run all the way on the lake to a place called Lakewood. So Lakewood's an old city, but very stable, solid, tons of bars, tons of restaurants. A lot of young people gravitate that way. So that's like one thing. But if you want to get into like the next up and coming area, you could say, you can go east of Cleveland. There's a cool spot a little bit south, 10, 15 minutes from downtown called Clark Fulton. So Metro Health Hospital, speaking on the healthcare, is one of a big provider here, and their main campus is in what you call Clark Fulton is what you call it. It's still Cleveland, but that's like the submarket.
Yeah.
And over the last few years, they did $1 billion redevelopment of their campus. So as you see that, you're seeing doctors, nurses, people really buying that area, and not used to be kind of rough, and on the outskirts it still is, but it's definitely headed in the right direction. So, there's plenty of opportunity here in Cleveland, depending on what you want. We kind of service any kind of investor, whether they want that B class, stabilized, ready to go, walk to the bar, or solid C that has some appreciation potential down the road.
Would you say it's kind of like the Brooklyn of Cleveland, artsy, up and coming, that sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny when I talk to clients, I'm like, yeah, this is good right here, but 2 blocks over, it's like not. So I'm not super familiar with Brooklyn.
Me neither, by the way. And I just, I can relate better if we compare them to Los Angeles areas, but I don't know how well you know LA either.
A little bit better than Brooklyn, but yeah, I mean, it's like the hip art, artsy, very modern type stuff. So that's why people are surprised when they come here. They're like, wow, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
And what area of Cleveland's like the Beverly Hills? What's the super stable, great area that you buy it, you're always going to have high quality tenants, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so like the Beverly Hills of, let's say, rentals, right? Let's keep it there.
Right.
Lakewood, I like a lot, right? So I mentioned Lakewood, it's on the lake, very stable. I don't see that going anywhere anytime. And then you have, like on the east side, a place called Cleveland Heights. So I really like those two as hubs. Ohio City, Tremont, they're getting a little bit tougher to pencil numbers over there. It's a lot of new construction, things like that. But if you want like an A class, like, that's not going anywhere. It's the proximity to downtown and the employers and healthcare. So another really cool spot is Little Italy. It's like a very small area by the Cleveland Clinic main campus and some universities that has been, a pivotal area for Cleveland for such a long time. And that's definitely not going to, the prices are there, highest they've ever been.
And, every city has its, rougher areas, right? And for some investors, they may like the roll up your sleeves, Section 8 type housing. Is there a market that you would point, or, submarket or pocket that you would point, them in the direction of if that was what they wanted to get into?
Yeah, so I mean, it really depends what you're looking for. We own some Section 8 stuff also, and it depends how rough you want to go, right? If you want to go the roughest, you go to East Cleveland. It's a little submarket of Cleveland that's very rough. You call it like with the war zone, really. But there's a lot of spots in Cleveland that could be like not a war zone, but still not, the nicest, that you can still buy properties for amazing prices and rents are significant. So honestly, a lot of places in Cleveland proper, even on the west side, on the east side, they're kind of scattered all over. But, that would be a good Section 8 type play. I have a client that has like a 38 unit portfolio that I've been hawking him, trying to sell it. And he's like, I need something to buy, right? So he bought these like dilapidated properties, went in, renovated them, put Section 8 tenants, and now he's got a great cash flowing portfolio. So that's what I'd say, just because the price per door is so much cheaper.
Right. Any primary considerations that you advise clients through in terms of current economic times? I know with interest rates being a little bit higher, it's probably more challenging to, obtain loans on terms that buyers are happy with. But, what do you advise them as they try to navigate this landscape?
Yeah, that's why I love commercial real estate and multifamily specifically. It's not emotional, right? So I tell my buyer clients, hey, they're asking $1 million. Let's run the numbers, see what number works for you with the current environment, with the current rents and the interest rate and the higher insurance costs, and we'll offer that. If it's $1 million, great. If it's 800,000, let's put an LOI in and see what happens.
Right.
That's why I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just a numbers game, right? And yes, you can't predict everything, but if you can do your best to figure out, what your insurance is, get some lenders lined up, know where your rate's going to be, it's kind of harder to miss, I'd say.
Right. Any hot takes or controversial thoughts or surprising thoughts about the current market happenings that you'd like to share?
Cleveland's going through a transition, you could say. So we have a mayor here right now, not to really get political, but he's trying to implement different things in the city that are getting pushed back on, city inspections. When, Cleveland proper, when you try to get something done, you can call up there for a year and no one's going to answer your phone. So it's like
gotta love bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's pretty much what it is. I mean, any city has it. So we're just working through that and kind of seeing how things progress, as time goes.
Given your background and expertise, I'm sure our listeners are curious about your answers to a few of our rapid fire questions and words of advice questions. You ready?
Fire away.
All right. So if you were given $50 million today and you had to invest it immediately, what would be your go-to asset type and location and why?
Is that coming from you?
That's coming from all of us. But yes, I am taking notes.
So I would say it's going to be a mix. I personally would invest in Ohio. I love Northeast Ohio. It's the majority of where our portfolio has been located. Like Columbus a lot too, but that's the location. Asset types, it'd be twofold. I love existing B and C class apartment buildings. With a $50 million check, I'm going to be doing less of like the C class value add. You got to renovate every unit. Maybe more of like some management efficiencies to bump rents and reduce some costs a little bit, and simultaneously buying single family portfolios, because I love the Section 8 model, how it is right now, and I think there's a lot of long-term potential with that kind of product. So it would be a mix of the single family portfolios, stabilized / semi-stabilized apartment buildings, here in Ohio.
Awesome. And any favorite tool or software you use on the job? And this is not a trick question.
Well, Crexi is definitely great. Obviously, got a shout out to you guys. The biggest thing that has helped us, and I touched on it before, is really our weekly meetings and the whiteboard. I know it's not a technology tool, but that's something, like I'm a visual learner. Everyone's very different. Like I have a friend of mine that's all about the systems and this and that. I'm like maybe a little more old school, and it is what it is, but it's worked very well for us. So that's probably the best thing that we have in our business. I mean, of course, the supercomputer that we all have in our hands, I think about it frequently, that I could be in line at the store and be doing deals or shooting out emails, whatever it is. So I think, those few things, and no specific amazing tech or anything. ChatGPT we use from time to time. But
interesting. This is actually coming from me, though. If you had to choose between the whiteboard or your smartphone, you could still have an old 90s Nokia phone, right? But if you use a smartphone, you got to go to the whiteboard. Which one are you picking?
Oh, man, Yannis, that's a toughie. Like right now, if I was where I am at right now in my business, I'd probably say the whiteboard. Because we're at the place, like I said, we're trying to implement systems where we can work on our business, not in our business all the time. The phone, it's like you're so easily sucked in. Even sometimes phone calls and texts, okay, but like emails, it's like you can easily get burnt out. And I've gotten to a point where I have gotten burnt out. I'm like, I need to learn how to set boundaries and kind of step back a little bit. So I choose the whiteboard all day.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little underrated to have just a functional phone, even, the Razor Flip where all it does is make calls, it's like you need to have access to everything all the time. I don't know, maybe for some people and some jobs, but no, I'm with you on that. And then finally, what is the most common misconception about your job or industry?
Twofold. So first, that brokers or agents work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That's number one. Like when it's a Saturday night and someone's calling me like, oh, I thought I'm like, I'm out of the office. Like, oh, I thought agents work. I'm like, if I called you at Saturday afternoon, are you going to answer the phone for work? Of course not. So yes, we've all been guilty of it, and I did it for a long time to build a business. So that's one. Second, people think it's very easy to become a broker or a realtor or a real estate agent or whatever. And the truth is the majority of agents make, I might say majority is probably like 80% on the exact number, make like $40,000 or $50,000 a year. That is the actual majority of people that are licensed in real estate. So it's not easy. Takes a lot of grit, a lot of ups and downs. You eat what you kill. It's a sales job. You're built on commissions. It's not for everybody, but if you can kind of withstand that, put the right things in place, and have a good foundation. I'm all about foundation. Then you can crush it. You can, the sky is truly the limit.
And don't forget a whiteboard too, though. It's an essential tool. Well, as we wrap up, any parting words you'd like to share with our audience?
No, I mean, I think it's important if you're a broker or an investor or, whatever, to kind of get clear on your vision, right? What do you want? Where do you want to go? And like why, kind of like the why, right? Like why do you want that? And I've touched on it a few times, like our purpose and our intention behind the business, something that we rely on frequently, especially when times get tough. It's like, shit, why are we fucking doing this? And you go back to it and, you stick it out and, you can do it. Listen, if I can do it, I'm not a genius by any means. We've been blessed along the way, truly. But I think if you have the will, then you can make it happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights. I know you're very busy, and we appreciate you spending the time to sit down with us.
No, it's my pleasure, Yannis. I really am thankful that you guys reached out. Of course, your platform has been great for us, and very grateful that I had the opportunity to speak to everyone, and truly thank you guys.
Amazing. And where can people find you online if they want to get in touch? Email, social media? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, social media, I've been like MIA for such a long time. So I'll just drop my email. That's probably the best way to do it. It's Tal, Tal, at premierclevelandinvesting.com. All the way spelled out. It's a mouthful, but gets the job done.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today. And thanks to everyone who tuned in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast and sign up to get the next episode delivered straight to your inbox. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app and check out our YouTube channel for video recordings of each episode. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.